Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
So for this keynote, I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer of an Australia-based publicly traded company called Whispir. They're traded on the ASX and they've been led since their inception by their Chief Executive Officer, Jeromy Wells.
Do you know the names of the people? Maybe the person in Darwin's gone surfing because the surf's good. And that's not about sending more, it's about increasing accuracy, increasing engagement before a communication's even been sent.
Have you made any mistakes?
Many.
Any that you care to share? What advice would you give us as a nation?
Wales has an opportunity to participate in the digital economy and play a role.
Jeromy, welcome to Wales.
Alan, thank you very much. Now, you might not know, but there is a Welsh connection. Whilst I'm a New Zealander, my paternal grandfather comes from Wales.
I mean, that makes you Welsh and especially an honorary Welshman. And I think we'd all be very proud to know that you of Welsh descent have done so well. I know you're a very humble guy, but honestly, Jeromy, I mean, your annual recurring revenue, it's a publicly known fact, right?
Indeed. So over 50 million and growing increasingly rapidly year on year.
Tell us what Whispir is, what it does, and then I'll let you to the journey and I'll stop interrupting you.
The back of this business is built on communications automation. So we want to remove the friction from communications processes so that they can happen at scale without error in a highly targeted and efficient way. Now, we're not talking about notifications. We're talking about interactive conversations and distributing actionable insights so that people have access to the right information at the right time, the right language on the right device, so that they can make informed decisions and take action.
Can you give us a couple of use cases?
The history of the business has really been built on communications automation, starting with crisis communications where people are under pressure, decision-making is impaired, they need to activate communications quickly. And unfortunately, when people rely on humans to do this, they're under pressure, decision-making is impaired, then errors occur. And so you want to enable them to disseminate and consume information from the edge of the organization to inform their decisions. And now to do that, you need to be resilient, you've got to be flexible, and you've got to be able to do things that weren't anticipated rapidly. So for example, if there's a lightning strike at an airport, the airport shuts down and all the tugs that tow the planes go off the apron. An airline will then notify all the other ports where they have planes on the ground about to fly to that airport and ask them to stay on the ground because they will just join a line of planes in the air. Now, there might be 7 different planes about to take off during this period. Do you know the names of the people? Maybe the person in Darwin's gone surfing because the surf's good. So the platform will automate those communications with one click, automatically find those people, ensure that they're notified, escalate automatically if that doesn't happen. Now, to do crisis communications well, you have to be very effective at operational communications and engaging with the community. They might be customers or they might be citizens. So today, 40% of our revenue comes from operational use cases. 45% of our revenue comes from customer or community engagement, and 15% comes from traditional crisis communications use cases.
So you would get these messages in a multitude of manners, right? I assume by text or by email on any device that you use. Is that correct?
And multiple channels. Maybe you prefer your messages in Urdu on WhatsApp, or you might want to post communications to Facebook Messenger or social channels like updating consistently Twitter at the same time you're updating your website if you're informing the community, so that you become the trusted source of truth. And you can do text to speech, recorded voice, secure video, pretty much whatever you can think of.
You're always fundraising as you're starting a business, right? From the moment that you begin, it's always worried about cash. Cash is king, all the stuff that we know. how many rounds did you get through? How difficult was that? How instrumental in your growth was getting cash at the right moment?
Totally agree that you're always raising capital or thinking about it or worrying about what's your runway, how you're going to manage it, how you're going to fulfill your obligations to your employees. If you don't have line of sight for how you're going to solve the next capital raising problem. I think in the beginning, though, I think you have to be innovative and creative, and you've got to do deals, and you've got to find ways of working with other people without raising money or spending money. And you have to be really frugal. It took us till December 2012 before we had enough momentum to do a formal Series A capital raising. So we raised $4.5 million, and that enabled us to solve problems in terms of scale and to change the velocity. Since then, we had two other following that. We raised just under 10 million across the two rounds. Then we had a pre-IPO round. So the idea is that we would raise capital pre-IPO, further accelerate the business so that post-IPO, we'd be confident that we had a solid runway. And then we had a $47 million IPO.
And then recently, you went back to the markets.
Indeed. We raised another 45 million because we're focused on growth. This is a growth opportunity, and these businesses need capital to accelerate. We have very high conviction about our product roadmap and our go-to-market strategy. And there's a real evolution happening within this business. As I mentioned before, we started with communications automation, but increasingly we're becoming a communications intelligence company, which is how we focus on next generation services for our clients. So this is prediction, detection, advanced automation. And that's not about sending more, it's about increasing accuracy, increasing engagement before a communication's even been sent, leveraging an extraordinary large data lake of insights that we have from the billions of messages that have been and interactions that we've managed on the platform today.
You know, there are members of this audience that are thinking about their business growth. They're at different stages, how they raise capital, and the amount of capital that you've raised, I think now puts you, of course, in the most extraordinary expansion opportunity. But the other part of people's interest, of course, is around intelligence, actionable insights, data for a purpose. And you are reaching into AI techniques, machine and natural learning. Tell us a little bit about the value of data to you and whether or not data has its place almost on the balance sheet as an asset.
I totally agree. I think it is the intrinsic value of this company is in the data lake that we have. I mean, you think about the implications of leveraging that data effectively. If a small business is spending $7.60 in order to pursue a transaction in terms of social marketing for a sale or what have you, if you can reduce the cost of that engagement to less than 35 cents, it will be transformative in terms of the impact that it has on small businesses and large businesses. We're dealing with a fashion retailer that has a global footprint. They send 100 million messages to their clients in Southeast Asia a year alone. But the engagement rate is so low. We only have to shift the needle a little bit, and the economics for this organization are material, but we can shift it a lot. You think about if you send far fewer messages, but the engagement that you're getting is up over 65%, then the value is tremendous. And the only way that you can do that is by leveraging data, insights, being able to predict the quality of the engagement, timing, tone, structure of language, structure of communication. It will be transformative, and we can't wait.
Amazing. You mentioned Southeast Asia, which leads me to the work that you're doing to expand. So presumably at some point in Australia, there's a ceiling, right, to your total available market. And you've moved, never good, tell me more about that, but you've moved towards Southeast Asia. And then importantly, particularly for this audience, and of course for me, you're trying to break America. And many pop bands before you have failed, Jeromy.
Yes, I know. Well, there's two things. Our market is expanding substantively. You know, the tailwinds are significant. You know, COVID has elevated digital transformation as a priority for all organizations. Our portfolio of customers, and we have fabulous blue chip brands, critical infrastructure providers, utilities, banks, telcos, airlines, emergency services agencies, government, education, healthcare. retail businesses, technology and what have you. But we still have a relatively small share of their communication spend and their wallet. And so there is a lot of scope for these organizations who have a tapestry of point solutions as part of their technology stack to consolidate onto an enterprise scale that's going to give them the flexibility to evolve. So our existing install base has a long way to go in terms of growth. The thing about this market is we're solving problems that can't really be solved. We want to give organizations the capability to be able to communicate as effectively as people do. Highly nuanced, highly contextually sensitive, trusted, everyone receives customized communication where meaning is amplified. Now that's a hard problem to solve. So I have no anxiety about the size of the market here. And I think in Asia, which is being totally ravaged by COVID at the moment, we have a vital role to play to support government and communities and businesses in this market. And we need to double down and support them and build trusted relationships that will endure for years to come.
You talk about COVID. What role are you playing in helping deal with the pandemic?
It's so varied. So you think about organizations and where people are now working from home. The fundamental social change is that the mobile phone has become the most important interface between an organization and its people. How do you communicate with them in an engaging, targeted, effective way at short notice, at scale? You can't rely on humans and call trees and email, collaboration tools, which are great, but they are islands of communication. We want to provide an extensible capability that's flexible, that can go from channel to channel across the journey of a single conversation. So it's important for communities as well and for customers of organizations, particularly this transition to the digital citizen. And you think about how government service provision can be really streamlined, but this is not about taking manual processes and making them digital. It's about taking a 12-step manual process and doing it 3 times. I want to digitally authenticate you. I want conditional pre-approval to do this and that. So the opportunity for driving efficiencies are material, like a function step in terms of service delivery, but it takes time and we're ready there to support them.
Is there a customer example where you are working with somebody specific on a COVID-based communication?
Well, to be clear, it's not about COVID content.
Gotcha.
It's
about what COVID has caused.
Exactly. Now, for sure, we support close contact monitoring, test result dissemination in a fast way. We support vaccination rollouts and the communications before, during, and after. Are you okay? Do you have any symptoms? All of that sort of stuff. But that's a tiny part of what we're doing. What we're really doing is responding to the digitization agenda of governments and organizations.
Nicely put. I often talk about we've gone from a low touch, no touch economy to a high touch economy, and that high touch has to be through the digital mesh.
That doesn't mean more though, Alan. Often it means less, right?
And more
just communications that you need. I'll give you an example, Alan. If I was running a restaurant and I sent out 100 meals and 97 of them got sent back because they weren't what the customers wanted, I wouldn't be patting myself on the back going, oh, hoo, 3% conversion rate is a great number. But in the communications industry, it seems to have been successful convincing people that that's okay. I don't think it's okay. So the task and the problem that we're solving is to change that dynamic and only give people the communications that they want at the time that they want it and they need it.
You're facing North America, tremendous opportunity for you. And based on the work that you've just described so eloquently that you do, there are many companies in Wales thinking, how do I crack the North American market? Give us a little bit of your experience to date.
I think the point you make is that there is a long line of businesses that have squandered a lot of their investors' capital. We're very sensitive to that, but we also identify the intrinsic market opportunity, and we see that we have a differentiated product strategy and that there is a large unserviced market in North America that where we have a role to play. Our approach is to be cautious and measured. We've had a very small footprint in terms of people in North America for a few years. Now, it's about building relationships with the channel partners that we think will help us get to market in a capital efficient way, so that we're not spending any money on marketing, where we have partners that can identify customers where we are the differentiation, the innovation that solves a known problem based on a track record of success, focusing on a few personas where we have case studies, reference points in similar industries here in Asia and ANZ. It's taken us a little bit of time though, because channel relationships are not fair weather friendships if they're real. You need to have alignment with plumbing. You've got to have an engagement with Salesforce. You've got to have executive buy-in. You have to have alignment around marketing strategies. And importantly, the sellers need to be incentivized correctly. Otherwise, all this effort will run out of puff. And you need early wins. And often you have to do the heavy lifting for the clients. But our approach has been to be measured in terms of how much capital we're prepared to deploy, to quietly build the relationships in the ecosystem, and then having validated the market and validated the personas that we're focused on, we've narrowed it down to just 5 personas. And that you might go, well, that lacks ambition, but this is about building a trajectory for future success. And we have no anxiety that those personas will expand over time as more people understand our organization. But the challenge that we have now is that we're not a North American brand, and there's a lot of education. So we have realistic expectations, but we have a plan that we have conviction with in terms of how we think we're going to unlock the value.
You strike me, as we come to sort of the last 5 minutes or so of this, as a very sequential thinker. You're very measured and have been in the growth of your company and where you've taken certain decisions in certain ways. Have you made any mistakes?
Many.
Any that you care to share?
The challenge for our organization is that we're dealing with a new market. It hasn't existed before. So there's not a template or a model that necessarily can say, well, we're a me too of this business. And that means we take risks, and some of those risks don't always work out. We had to make tough decisions, and often there were just 3 bad outcomes. A, B, and C were all going to be bad in one way or another, and they weren't the best thing for the business. And the mistake we made is that often culture would be sacrificed for technical skills. And that's a mistake. And not to hire for culture first, and through that lens, creates more expensive problems down the track that take a long time to solve. I think having a transparent strategic plan that is understood by everyone, aligned to a set of values, and then to engage people on that basis is a precondition for success and scale.
On a personal level, Jeromy, what are the things in business that you hold dear?
I want to build a substantive and large company that has material impact. We want to change the way the world communicates. We also have a privileged position where we are working with intellectuals and industry leaders at the cutting edge of industry, and our technology is deployed in extraordinary ways. We assist saving lives every day. I think that we have an obligation to transfer those insights and that advantage to the disadvantaged. And we have a role to play leveraging our technology to make it available to support other communities. So for mine, I want to see a large, substantive, successful business, but I also want to see us playing an active role and fulfilling our obligations to support the community and help the disadvantaged.
That's a purpose-driven business led by a purposeful CEO. Jeromy, lastly, here we are in Wales, virtually. Your grandfather would be proud. Is there anything that you've seen Australia do as a nation that you feel would be worth Wales learning about in the concept of technology or trade or infrastructure? What advice would you give us as a nation?
Maybe less about the successes, but more about the challenges that we see here. We have a lack of skills and knowledge workers in this country. And whilst there is tremendous investment happening at the moment in terms of infrastructure, building capacity, the market is at full capacity. and we don't have the depth of expertise, and that's problematic for us. And I think, it has been a missed opportunity not building a pipeline of young talent in this country. Wales has an opportunity to participate in the digital economy and play a role, but it needs to do that on the back of an educated population. And it's a critical precondition, because people will leave. You'll have brain drain, and it'll, to be sustainable, we need to invest in education.
Well, Jeromy, thank you for giving us your time all the way there in Melbourne, Australia, which is where I presume you are today. And look, on behalf of the conference here, on behalf of me, thank you. And congratulations on building such a successful, purpose-driven business. Jeromy, it's been a pleasure to have you, and much future success we wish you.
Thank you, Alan. I know it's lovely to be invited to participate, and congratulations to you on your successful career as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. We'll see you soon. Come to Wales.
One day.
Our thanks to Jeromy. I'm sure you will agree. He was sequential in thought, very eloquent, and knows his market and his company extremely well. And his success, both in Australia, outside of Australia, and the growth he has yet to achieve, and a CEO that's been with the company from the beginning to this moment, is pretty unique. A great thinker and a great leader. I hope you enjoyed that segment and took from it some snippets that might be of value to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.